Look, Mr. Bubbles, it's an angel. I can see light coming from his belly. Wait a minute, he's still breathing. It's alright. I know he'll be an angel soon.
Little Sisters are among the most interesting and recognizable entities that Jack will encounter during the events of the game BioShock. Veritable ADAM factories that have been designed with the sole purpose of collecting the substance, these abominations were once innocent young girls, experimented on to create these disturbing hollow-eyed shells that remember nothing of their lives before Brigid Tenenbaum implanted a sea slug in their stomachs.
The augmentation procedure is a success. The slugs alone could not provide enough ADAM for serious work, but combined with the host, now we have something. The slug is embedded in the lining of...
The story of the Little Sisters as we know them begins with a woman named Brigid Tenenbaum and her discovery of a miracle substance that she would dub ADAM. ADAM would revolutionize the world of genetic engineering, opening up limitless possibilities to change and enhance a person's body to the limits of their imagination. Beauty, intense modification, even supernatural powers. With ADAM, everything was possible. However, despite its incredible potential, scarcity would render the true experimentation of this material almost impossible. And so, for Brigid, she would first need to find a solution to its inaccessibility. Through her research, she would find that if she were to embed a sea slug from which ADAM was derived into the stomach of a host, she could increase the output of usable ADAM exponentially. She would work tirelessly to find hosts that were compatible with the procedure, finding that, for unknown reasons, young girls were the only ones capable of bonding with the slug. This revelation would lead to a new need for test subjects, and so her business associate in the endeavor, a man named Frank Fontaine, would establish an orphanage in Apollo Square to exploit Rapture's forgotten children. Tenenbaum would lead the scientific charge to converting these girls into viable ADAM farms, the nickname Little Sisters coming about as they still retained much of their childlike essence, a fact that would upset Brigid, who'd hoped to keep them in some form of stasis.
The children must remain functional to be effective producers of ADAM. I had hoped we placed them into vegetative states so they would be more pliable. I find being around them very uncomfortable.
With the Little Sisters program ever expanding, it wouldn't be long before ADAM as a product would begin to infiltrate the underwater city. Plasmids would become a household commodity, and forward-thinking professionals would begin to use ADAM as a means of enhancing their capabilities. Advertisements for new, exciting ADAM-based products would flood the city more and more every day, and as they did, Little Sisters would become essential. Tenenbaum would eventually renounce her role in the creation of these hollow-eyed abominations. She'd let her scientific curiosities get the best of her, as she'd abandon all her morals in the pursuit of progress. However, Rapture was already well beyond the ability to stop its ADAM production, regardless of the ethical quandaries. Even as Tenenbaum's associate Frank Fontaine would die, and Andrew Ryan would take the helm of his industries, he would be appalled by the realities of where ADAM was coming from, but see no way to separate his city from its reliance. Word of where the miracle substance was truly coming from would eventually hit the gossip of the city, and in a show of strength, Ryan would shut down the Apollo Square orphanage, moving all the Little Sisters to the Little Wonders educational facility so as to divert attention away and put on a front of a school and training center. Behind the closed doors, though, business continued as usual. ADAM was simply too entrenched to be removed from Rapture, and as a new threat named Atlas would come bearing civil war, Ryan had no choice but to accelerate production. He would begin by rebranding the Little Sisters as saviors of the city, trying to soften the abhorrence that the general public felt to their very existence. To that end, he would create trinkets in their image, parade them around the city as well-behaved little girls, and even create the Gatherer's Guard machines to turn them into a marketing mascot.
What I wanted. Mark my words. Presented properly, those Little Sisters are marketing gold.
These efforts would be successful in rallying public support for the Little Sisters program, but as the war raged and addiction rattled Rapture's very foundation, Ryan would begin to get desperate to provide more and more Adam. With the orphanage closed and suitable hosts nearly impossible to come by, Ryan's team would find themselves resorting to kidnapping young girls to generate greater quantities of Adam. But it still wasn't enough. With Atlas breathing down his neck and conditions in the city growing worse by the day, a new idea would be floated to make Little Sisters even more capable of producing. With heaps of dead now lining the walkways of Rapture, the idea would be proposed to allow the virtually indestructible Little Sisters to search the city looking for corpses from which to recycle excess Adam. In practice, though, demand for the substance had become so alluring to the citizens that they would attack and steal from the sisters on site. So to ensure their safety, a protector would also need to be created. They would call this new brute a Big Daddy, and through detailed reprogramming and complex augmentation, they would bring about a creature that was both ferocious in its attack capabilities and gentle with the Little Sisters. Of course, their development would come with its own myriad of complications, but in the end, a bond between Big Daddies and Little Sisters would be created. And in the depths of the underwater city, a new symbiotic relationship would be formed.
Sequence to allow for... Get away, you filthy little shit! What? What are you doing? Get back! Get back!
As the world surrounding the Little Sisters became more and more bleak, however, there was one person who'd begun to fight on their behalf. The one woman who was responsible for their creation in the first place, none other than Brigid Tenenbaum. From the sewers beneath Olympus Heights, Brigid had begun to toil away at a solution to the problem she'd created. Adam was a sickness. She could see it now. And from her studies, she would manage to produce a cure to that sickness that could return the Little Sisters back to their former senses. But she couldn't do it alone. And as another person from her past would appear in her path, she would ask him for aid. Ultimately, though, the choice was up to Jack, and as he tore his way through the submerged city, he would save the children he could as he fought for his own freedom. Jack would eventually face the man holding his strings, and in the end, it would be Tenenbaum's reformed Little Sisters that would come to his side, a thanks for his part in freeing them from their own servitude. And as Jack emerged from the sea, he would bring with him several of the children he'd saved along the way. However, while for a time, the deaths of both Ryan and Fontaine would spell the end of the Little Sisters program, it wouldn't stay defunct forever, as another former Rapture bigwig, Sophia Lamb, would reinstitute the process. Only this time, dragging children from the surface under the waves to a now very desolate and decaying underwater city. Little Sisters are some of the most fascinating entities that Jack will encounter during his adventures in Rapture. Young girls taken from their homes and forced into a life of servitude. These children would have their heads so filled with brainwashing that they would see nothing but idyllic scenes of paradise as they wandered the horrible tunnels of this once great city. A terrifying vision of research beyond ethics, and a perfect encapsulation of everything that would go wrong in Rapture.
We saw our Masha today. We barely recognize her. That's her, Sam said. You're crazy, I told him. That thing? That is our Masha? But he was right. She was drawing blood out of a corpse by Fontaine Fisheries. And then when she was done, she walked off hand in hand with one of those awful golems. Masha!